bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready? Right.
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go.
And good morning, Eagle Nation. It is a non-football Friday for the Philadelphia Eagles. A bunch of other teams going to play, but not the Eagles nor the Chiefs. We're here to look ahead to a game that's still 9 days away, and it's starting to get annoying, I'll be honest with you. But we will shoulder through, and Johnny Mack will give us the insight.
These bye weeks are tough, Jody.
They are for fans, for guys like us who have to try and come up with things to say and angles to play for the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, I'll give you one right off the bat, and we're going to talk plenty today about Jalen Hurts. Yours truly missed yesterday's show. I had a medical procedure done on my noggin. That's why I'm wearing the hat today. And I can tell you, new appreciation for Jalen Hurts. Playing hurt is no bargain. Yours truly is in a little bit of pain this morning, despite taking heavy medication last night. Didn't help me sleep much. So I know what it's like to play through pain. And yeah, I have a deeper appreciation for Jalen Hurts. And John, that was the big story yesterday. The fact that Jalen Hurts did not throw at Eagles practice. There's no way you can spin this as good news. The question is, how bad news is it? What was your read?
I think, it's about rest at this point. I mean, Nick Sirianni said earlier this week, and he proved to be truthful in this instance. He said, we asked him how are you going to handle the bye week, and when he was talking about practice, he mentioned, and Jason Kelsey said this yesterday as well. You don't know who you're playing, so you can't game plan. You have some of the coaches doing some advanced work, some of the lower level coaches on all four potential opponents. Obviously, they know the Cowboys and Giants well anyway, two of those four potential opponents. But you can't game plan. So what do you do? And he said it's going to be more like an OTA, albeit with pads, maybe, and he did put the pads on. That was a little bit of a surprise. OTA environment as far as, technique and fundamentals, and a lot of the young players getting extra attention, to be honest. And a lot of the veteran players, not just Jalen. A.J. Brown didn't practice at all. It's just maintenance. Lane Johnson was off to the side. A lot of maintenance for the guys who are key players. And Jalen obviously fits in that category, but there's no doubt. And we're going to have Dr. Jessica Flynn on the show today, and I really am excited about that because there's something going on here, and I don't know what's going on. You read all the documentation on this particular injury and this SC joint sprain, and you have grade 1. You obviously didn't have a grade 1 because he wouldn't be hurting like hell, like Jody Mack. That was description of Nick Sirianni about the game against the Week 18 game against the Giants, hurt like hell. So we all kind of focused, it can't be grade 3 because he didn't have a separation or a subluxation or a dislocation. He didn't have that. So it had to be grade 2, and grade 2, 2 to 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, maybe. We're past that. Well, we're right about in that 4-week area, but and he's still hurting like hell. There's got to be some gray areas. So I'm going to be interested to pick her brain about that. But they're going to rest him. And remember, people didn't believe this, but the original plan was to rest him until January 21st or January 22nd. They were hoping to get one of those wins and rest him, but they had to bring him back. They got what they needed to get done in an ugly fashion, no doubt about it, against the JB of the Giants. Was there a setback? I don't know, but he did throw a little bit. He didn't throw, I saw some people say he didn't throw at all. He threw a little bit, but he's just lightly tossing, like, the first day of spring training, just a light toss. She certainly wasn't airing out. The more concern to me, though, was, again, he wasn't in the ball security drills, which is weird because he was out there. And again, this is not, when I say ball security, is that they don't let TJ Edwards haul off on you. They're just hitting you with pads and boxing gloves, and they're not letting them go through that stuff. So, there's angst in Philadelphia about Jalen Hurts' injury. And for the first time, I think there should be some angst.
Correct. It's a legitimate concern. You say he might have thrown the ball lightly. Here's what I don't understand about yesterday, John. And yeah, you and I don't have the x-rays or the MRIs so that you would need to make a diagnosis. As you mentioned, we're going to have Dr. Jessica Flynn joining us coming up in about 15 minutes from now. And she too will not have the MRIs, but she can certainly speak to it better than we could. So we're playing a guessing game here, a quasi informed guessing game. Don't you go one way or the other here? He played in the game last week. He threw the ball in the game last week. Between you and I liked the way the ball left his hand. I thought he threw it pretty darn well.
Yeah,
if I didn't know that he was hurt, I wouldn't have watched that game tape afterward and go, man, is he dealing with something? Because he didn't throw the ball well. He threw the ball fine. Maybe not the best he threw it all year, but he threw it fine. And then they bring him out and half-hearted go to a practice. He's dressed, he's padded up, but he's just throwing lightly on the sidelines. Don't you go one way or the other? Say, all right, listen, he played. He played last week. He's going to play next week. We got to prep the way that we prep for a game, for an OTA, off week, and everything else. Jalen go out and have a quote-unquote regular practice. Or Jalen, go stand next to A.J. Brown. He's got rest week. He's not playing at all. He's not dressing, nor are you. We're going completely in protection mode. They went to this half-hearted middle yesterday, which I just didn't understand. What do you think the line of thinking was behind that?
To stem panic, in the city. I mean, there is a public relations aspect to this. You're probably right. They should have just, had him off to the side like AJ. But, he's the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was the MVP candidate until this injury kind of put him off to the side. There is a PR aspect of it. So you throw him out there and he doesn't do little, but you can say he was at practice. That's the only thing I can think of, to be honest, because he didn't do much. And I can't imagine he did much after we left the media. They're resting him. So I do think it was more of a PR thing than anything else. But now to me, I'm at the point where the only way the Eagles aren't in the NFC Championship game is if Jalen Hurts is severely limited, because I've said it. The 4 potential opponents they should beat, and they should beat pretty easily at home with a typical, a usual, a close to 100% Jalen Hurts. Not even concerned about it. With the guy who was playing against the Giants, I'm concerned about it. Now, I can't imagine they would go into the playoffs with the same mentality that they had against the Giants as far as taking essentially the zone read out of the offense, the zone read mechanics out of the offense. I can't imagine they would do that. I would imagine they'd let him play through the pain and play at his normal sort of, level of everything in the offense. So, then the question becomes, how effective can you be in a limited fashion? So that's kind of where we are. Now, they got a long time, and there's 12 other teams still alive that have to fight for their playoff lives this weekend. They can't even think about the Eagles at this point. So it's a luxury to rest. But, Jason Kelsey was talking about it. He said, and he wasn't talking about Jalen specifically. He was talking in general about the bye week. People say, how important is rest? How important is rest in the bye week? And he said, to be honest with you, at this stage of the season, a week's not going to help you that much. You're all banged up. You're sore. You're going to stay sore. He said the advantage is the ability to sort of step back and get back to those technique and fundamentals, because you can't do that in the regular season. I always go back to Jim Schwartz was the first one who told me, and it was, and it's obvious, but they don't do that crap during the season. I think fans don't understand that, and Jim said, the off season is for teaching. The training camp is for evaluation. Now there's teaching as well in the early stages of training camp, but it's better if you just say it in 1-3. Training camps for evaluation. And then the regular season, you're just prepping for the next opponent. That's it. You're not worried about developing. Now, Nick does certain things and, with younger players, and you have a 5-minute period here. It's not much, Jody. It's not much. You're just focused on the next opponent. So Kelsey said the biggest advantage is the ability to get back to that and sharpen your technique, which goes a little bit by the wayside and fundamentals. But if you're banged up, you're banged up. A week's not going to help you that much. A little bit, not that much.
Fair enough. And I think it differs with every single individual on how much they're coming back from. Good news yesterday was Josh Sweat back out of practice. If ever there's anybody you think's going to get a rest day, it's a guy coming back off an injury that had him carted off the field just 2 weeks ago, and that was not the case. He was back out there with his mates yesterday. Don't know how strenuous his workout was and what they actually asked him to do or put him through, but that's a pretty big potential upside for the Eagles.
It's funny. He's the guy you don't have to worry about. He's playing. So I think it was, his thing was the optics, right? It's so scary when you see somebody carted off the field, but he's fine. He's ready to go. He's going to play. Yeah, and he's had a great season. And when you have Josh Sweat opposite Hassan Reddick on that pass rush, it becomes a terror at times for opposing teams. But yeah, when we talk about the level, I mean, Jalen, Lane, Aaron Cepas, even he's going to try to make it back, which is a shock. And he talked yesterday, and that was a surprise. And he avoided surgery, and he's going to try to punt in the playoffs. It might be this week, not this week, next week in the divisional round. It might be the championship game if they reach that far, but he's going to be back. Josh Sweat, everybody concerned, rightfully so, because of what we saw, but he's fine. He's fine. And the thing with the Eagles, they were pretty sure it was all precautionary. And that's a good thing about the NFL now versus the way it used to be. They will be, even with a player of that caliber, they will be safer. And if there's any inkling of something that could be wrong, they want to err on the side of caution. It wasn't always that way. And that's what they did. And they were even more cautious by keeping him out of Week 18. They also felt, to be honest, that they didn't need him that much. And he's going to be back, no question about it.
That's a good re-addition from a production standpoint, and also I think a mental standpoint. And yeah, you're right. Kelsey touched on this yesterday. How much are they really going to be able to accomplish with this extra week? You don't know who you're playing. There's only so much you could do. Oh, from a mental standpoint, you can get a refresh. And if you get a guy like a Josh Sweat back that everyone had these concerns as it being carted off just a couple of weeks ago, I think that's a major plus for the Eagles' psyche. All right, JM, before we get Doc Flynn up here, I did want to ask you this. Whoever they play next week, it could be any one of a couple teams. And before the show is over, I'm going to make you pick the other playoff games and see who that's going to leave at the Eagles' doorstep next week, if you're right. Don't know who it's going to be, but it's a team that we think that the Eagles can handle and should be able to handle pretty easily. When that game kicks in, when it gets here, and we'll have a better read on Jalen's health, I think we can all agree that the play calling in the final game of the regular season against the Giants was altered from what we're used to seeing with Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, what we saw over the majority of the regular season. How much pressure is on Shane Steichen for that first playoff game? We always talk about who's got the most pressure on. Well, of course, Jalen does, because he's the quarterback. The head coach is always a candidate. We almost never go to the offensive coordinator. Even if he's the play caller, he's usually down the list. But I think there's a huge amount of pressure on Shane Steichen because of the way the last game went, because yesterday in practice, Jalen Hurts hardly threw. So we all have no idea how his shoulder is. We'll get a read a couple of plays into the game. Quite surprised that they decided to go 8 straight passes and start the game the other day, but they didn't have any designated runs. How much pressure is on Shane Steichen in the Eagles versus to be determined?
Yeah, I think that he wants to perform well because he wants to be a head coach. And I think if they perform poorly, that's going to hurt his standing. You know how people are around this league, and it's about making a splash. And so if they perform well, that's going to help them. If they perform poorly, it's obviously going to be an issue. So from that standpoint, but there's always pressure. Nick Sirianni talks about that all the time. There's always pressure in the NFL. Their offense is pretty simple as a whole. And as long as you have that zone read mechanics, and it's not about Jalen throwing the ball. I say it all the time. It's running the ball. Sorry. It's about the threat of running the ball and what it does to the opposing defense. So as long as that mechanism is back on the offense, everything's going to be fine from a play calling standpoint. Then it becomes an effectiveness standpoint. And how effective can Jalen Hurts be? So, yeah, I mean, the pressure's there because he wants to be a head coach and he's got 3 interviews and he better succeed or people are going to look in another direction. So, but, it's about the players on game day. So, how effective. He's not changing the offense. They're going to run their offense. And they have plenty of playmakers.
Did they run their offense against the Giants last?
No, they didn't. They took the zone read mechanics out. I'm saying as long as that's what I said. As long as that's back in the equation, everything's fine. If that's not back in the equation, they got issues because things get muddy when you don't have that threat to the opposing defense. And that's what Wink Martindale, even with backup players, figured out pretty quickly in that game. Oh, Jalen's not going to run the football. And then things become much, much, much more difficult.
They are easier to defend. All right. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. You got Mac and MacBird 365. A big issue with the Philadelphia Eagles going into the postseason with their 14-3 record and their bye is health. And we're going to get sports physician Dr. Jessica Flynn up next to join us and hopefully give us some insight on what the Eagles are dealing with and how big a deterrent it could be some 10 days from now when the Eagles get back out there on the field for their first playoff matchup. Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. Stay with us.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Appreciate you being part of Birds 365. It's a non-football Friday. It's a football Friday, just not for the Philadelphia Eagles because they don't play till next week, earn themselves a bye, and we're questioning how healthy they will be going into that game. Here to lend us a helping hand is sports physician Dr. Jessica Flynn, Doc Jordan McDonald, and John McMullen here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
You're not playing through pain, no injuries for you. You're ready to go for the postseason here?
I am ready to go.
All right. It's good to see you, Doc. Jalen Hurts, we'll start there, obviously. One of the biggest stories, not only here in Philadelphia, but the entire NFL. So, treat me like an idiot because I am an idiot. But, we've had sort of this gamesmanship with Nick Sirianni, talked about Jalen's superhero-like ability to come back from injuries, which I think was a disservice to him. First off, can you explain the SC joint shoulder sprain, which is a little more uncommon than the AC, and the different grades? Because we were told it was a grade 2, and then I want to get to the timetable if that's the case.
Of course. So when he came down on the side of his shoulder, he kind of came directly down on the side of it with force. There really are 3 main injuries that can happen with that, and they both are around the clavicle or the collarbone. So you can either separate or sprain the joint at the shoulder end, which is the AC joint. You can crack the collarbone or just break it in half, or you can separate it at the end that's closest to the midline, which is the sternoclavicular joint. It's the joint where the clavicle attaches or communicates with the sternum, the breastbone, right? So this, we talk about a shoulder injury. You see him listed as a shoulder injury, but it's not really. It's like right in the middle of his chest. And this injury is pretty common in the NFL more than other places, just because of that mechanism happens a lot during a tackle, right? And it can be an emergency. So if that joint dislocates to the back, then the bone can go and start to really interfere with some of the major blood vessels and the ability to breathe. So obviously that wasn't the case in this situation. It was a sprain. And it's something that athletes can play through, but it's painful. A grade 2 injury means that there is partial tearing of the ligaments that attach the little rubber bands that hold that joint together. And so there can be a little bit of instability, like clicking when he goes to throw, he might feel like a little bit of movement there, which is uncomfortable. And it just adds to what really at the end of the day, as long as it's a safe situation, is mostly a pain tolerance type of an injury.
Doc, we've heard forever, and John and I certainly have been around longer than you have, but forever the story was in the NFL. Well, just shoot him up and get him out there. That you can take a shot for pain depending on the injury and where it is. Is Jalen's injury that type of injury? Is it something that they could give him a shot for that would dull and numb the area, and certainly going to pay a price for it afterwards? It's going to be that much more painful when the Novocaine wears off. But is that type of an injury the one we're talking about here with Jalen Hurts?
It's generally in that category of injury, yes. Again, this joint's a little bit more important than the little joint at the other end, which, Jimmy Garoppolo got a ton of slack for not just taking a shot and playing, when he was with the Patriots years ago. This one's a little bit more of a vital joint, and you want to know about a little discomfort and instability there. Pain medication is an option. So an anti-inflammatory, sometimes they'll give them. I agree. I don't like to use the term shoot 'em up because, it just sounds like the way that the NFL was in the 80s. And I like, we've at least come, if the last week has taught you nothing, I think that the NFL has come a little bit far from those days. It's still a work in progress, but, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's fair. And Josh Sweat's another star player was, scared. Everybody was stretchered off in week 17, and he's fine. So they were very it was precautionary and scared the hell out of everybody, but it shows you how far the NFL has come, because he's a 10+ sack guy, and they it was early in the game and they said, no, we're not gonna risk anything. So there has been a lot of it's a lot better than it was in the Wild West, so no question about that. Getting back to Jalen, though, in this particular industry, in injury, you have timetable, obviously, and at some point it's going to heal. But the Eagles kind of talked about there was, and I shouldn't even say the Eagles, but there were certain NFL sources that talked about early in the injury there was risk of maybe breaking the collarbone, maybe a more serious injury. At what point do you kind of turn that corner and it becomes about just pain rather than risking further injury?
Yeah, right after this injury, so I do a weekly call with the 33rd team, and we talk about stuff like this. And early on, I said, the main risk of him going back right away is that he gets thrown down on that shoulder, especially, I know we're going to talk about Lane Johnson, but especially without Lane Johnson there, that he gets thrown down on that shoulder and he injures the joint even further. That was like the big thing to prevent, less the clavicle, in my opinion, the clavicle breaking. Of course, I've never seen the images, yada, yada, but that would be the thing I would worry about. I think, that still obviously is a risk. It's going to be through the playoffs and hopefully deep until mid-February. That's always going to be a risk that he can injure it further. He is exactly where I expected him to be. I expected if they weren't able to, clinch the bye, that he'd come back and play and try to clinch that bye, because he really needs those 2 weeks to heal for the playoffs. So he's kind of following that pattern. Every time he plays, he's going to irritate this. And then the week after, he's going to have to recover. And so it will just be a matter of, trying to avoid getting thrown down, maybe throwing away a ball so he doesn't get thrown down on that shoulder, being careful and kind of managing this through the playoffs so he can recover in the off season.
You mentioned Lane Johnson, so we'll go to him next. He's been out the last several weeks, has the torn abductor muscle. It's something that needs to be operated on, but he has decided not to have the operation till after the season is over and done with. This type of injury, how much is Lane putting himself at risk?
Well, Jody, I will correct you and say it's not his
abductor. Yeah.
The reason I'm going to correct you is because that's his butt. He did not tear his butt. He teared his groin, which is the adductor.
Yeah.
And the problem with that injury is that you can't do anything without that muscle. Like it is so, especially for linemen, it's lateral movement. It's just walking. It's just standing up. You're using that tendon. This is also a significant pain tolerance thing. It's not going to heal. We know he needs surgery. So the question is, can he gut it out and be effective? We know he can gut it out, but can he be effective in doing that? Because he needs to generate power with his legs. So, I'm happy to see him out there, at practice, whether or not he's working with the team or alongside them on the side. But what we'll really know, like halfway into the game, when he comes back from halftime, when he's been sitting, if he makes it to halftime, which, fingers crossed, comes after sitting in that locker room for 20 minutes or whatever it is, it'll be really telling how he's moving and how effective he's able to move.
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. William Myers, who was from Philadelphia. He's sort of the core muscle guy in the NFL. Everybody goes to Dr. Myers. He hates when people use the term sports hernia. And he's tried to change that because there's so many different injuries with core muscles, and they could be varying ones. Is this one? Are you surprised that Lane is going to try to play through this particular injury?
No, I would have given, if I saw an athlete with the injury that we've heard he has, again, I don't know for sure that's the exact right thing, but I would certainly have said, look, what do you want to do? You're going to have surgery. I don't know. It's maybe 50-50 that you're going to be able to really be super effective all the way through the playoffs, or it's 70, whatever number he was given. You're not going to really do further damage. You need surgery anyway. Do you want to try to tough it out? I think, if we repair this in the off season, you should be back within 3 months. But why not? Why not try to support him, give him some medication, let him rehab, and see if he can get through these games and be effective.
This is probably an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. But if you want to dodge it, feel free. We all like, as sports fans, percentages. We want to know what percentage is a guy. What percent is he? 90, 80, 70, 50, 100. Well, we all understand 100. And then everything falls into your own grading category. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to ask about an individual player. I'm going to ask you about the team. The Eagles got an extra week of rest because they finished with the number one record in the NFC, so they got to bye, and they know they're getting home teams. What kind of percentage do you think you can kick your game up just with a week's rest at the end of the season? Now, you went to a 18-week, 17-game grind, and then you get a bye week. They all strive to get to the bye week during the regular season. Yeah. The Eagles are only one of 2 teams that get a bye week here going into the postseason. What kind of percentage advantage does that give the Eagles?
I would typically say for the average team that everyone's dealing with something, right? So these like little nagging soft tissue things like a hamstring or quad, whatever, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's probably helpful. I don't know how helpful it is, maybe 5% helpful, 10% helpful, whatever. Plus the extra time for game planning, theoretically, extra focus, right? Because you had a week off, so to speak. But I think for this team, it was so critical. And it's why I really thought that Jalen would come back and play last week, because these 2 injuries at these 2 massively important positions for this specific team an extra week of rest is critical, absolutely critical. So I think this was a huge win for them to be able to get that bye.
A lesser known injury, at least nationally, but kind of big for the Eagles, is their punter went down, Aaron Cepas. And I don't know if you saw the play, Jessica, but it was against the Giants, and he got a punt blocked. He tried to pick up the football. He ran. It was a heck of a play, but he got injured at the very end. And we all thought, he was done for the year. And Aaron showed up in the locker room yesterday, and I was talking to him, and he said he had a high ankle sprain. Turns out a torn deltoid ligament, and he avoided surgery. And he was he just got, he was in a cast to start a little rollabout, and he just ditched a walking boot. Torn deltoid ligament, that can heal without surgery?
Yes. And actually, I did see the play. Now you reminded me. It did kind of look like a high ankle, but then it rolled a little bit. And that gets the deltoid, which is a giant ligament along the inner part of your ankle. They absolutely can heal, but they're very painful. They take longer to heal than the standard inversion where your ankle kind of turns in. That's the basketball low ankle kind of injury. The medial ones, the deltoid ones, take longer to heal. And that's probably why he was not weight bearing at first on that little roller scooter. But they're nasty injuries, but they do definitely heal, and no long-term consequences. Patients do really well.
Wow.
Want to move away from the Eagles for just 1 second, if that's okay, Doc. It looks like the Miami Dolphins are going to have to play this week without Tua Tagovailoa, who has been twice in the concussion protocol this year. A lot of debate on whether he should have been in the protocol in a game earlier this year when it looked like he couldn't just walk on his own as he got up after being hit in the game. I think most people understand the Tua situation. NFL in general have attempted to advance, to make better their concussion protocol, outside observers and medical people at the game to judge the players and the like. Your estimation of the job that the NFL has done to better protect their players with the concussion issues that are part of the game in the National Football League?
That's a loaded question, but I am happy to tackle it. So I do think they've made needed changes this year. I think the change in the protocol to have these red flag kind of things where you just pull a guy no matter what is important. The follow through is even more important. So spotters actually seeing these things and actually pulling these guys from the field is important. Are they moving in the right direction? Yes, but they're moving too slowly, in my opinion. And I do respect the fact that they have to balance this with, they don't want to pull every guy. Every play ends, almost every play ends with a hit. There's always contact on the line, right? So guys hit their heads on the turf, and we don't see it on TV because they don't get up and wobble or whatever, right? But you don't want to be pulling guys, and guys don't want to be pulled if they're fine, if they just hit the turf and they're totally fine. So you do have to have some kind of guidelines, and that's what they're attempting to do with the NFL protocol. So I do think it can, or concussion protocol. I do think it can get better, and I do think they need to work a little faster, but concussions will never, ever, ever disappear from this game. No helmet. There's no magic helmet that's going to stop it.
Yeah.
So they do. It is something that they're going to have to continue to get better at diagnosing.
The scariest of all the situations, obviously, was Damar Hamlin. So, I mean, that from that perspective, that was a play that we see all the time. And all of a sudden you see something that thankfully didn't turn into a tragedy. But as a position, when you see something like that, is that just an outlier? Is it a concern? What was your sort of frame work when you see something that happen? Now, obviously, we know it's a dangerous and violent game, but that wasn't the typical. We see more dangerous hits than that all the time, and this could have been the worst situation we've ever seen in the NFL. Thankfully, Damar's doing well right now.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be able to talk about this on the other side. It was terrifying for sure. But this is absolutely a freak thing. Okay. This type of an injury typically does not occur in football. Okay. So it's an incredibly rare thing to happen. And football is not the place where we normally see it. We normally see it in lacrosse or baseball, where there's a very small, forceful object hitting someone in the chest and impacting at just the right time, at just the right spot. Very unusual to happen. If this was a result of the hit, if this was commotio cordis, where the chest, the heart gets hit and kind of jiggled at just the wrong time in the electrical activity and it short circuits, that's much more common in other sports. A cardiac arrest is much more common in sports like basketball, where we see more like genetic predisposition, tall guys with long arms, hyper athletic. They're more likely to have underlying cardiac things that can cause a cardiac event like this. So while it was super scary, I just try to reassure people this is not a football specific thing.
Doc, as you could well imagine, we talked about it for days after what happened. And yes, we're all so happy that we're talking about this on the road to recovery for Mr. Hamlin. But I would take calls on the air and be well, what can the NFL do to keep this from happening again? Even acknowledging it's a rare and unique and kind of a very unpredictable situation that transpired on the field in Cincinnati. Is there anything the NFL could do? I just blindly guess maybe there's an extra piece of equipment you can put on the chest that covers the heart. That's not really the case. Usually the shoulder pads come down above the heart. Do you think the NFL could or should take any steps to add a piece of equipment to cut out even further shrink the possibility of something like this happening again?
No. I think there are much bigger injury concerns like playing surface to tackle that can be life altering for athletes than that. I think the crazy thing is that medical team that was there literally broke down their response. They have video, they have radio. They literally looked at it and were like, well, we saved this guy's life, but we could do better next time. That is the most critical thing they can do. And maybe not prevent this. It's so rare. But be ready in case anyone goes down, be it a player, coach, staff member, anyone, to have that ready.
And they deserve all the credit in the world, because the silver lining was to have that medical personnel right there. Because if you have a cardiac event and nobody's there, then it does turn into a tragedy. So that was the silver lining, and they were heroes. I mean, that was unbelievable. And how quickly they jumped into action. And they're still thinking about how they can do it better. So that was, but we do have a couple more minutes. So I have to get back to traditional football and traditional injuries. Lamar Jackson, another playoff quarterback. He's been out for 5 games. Looks like he's not going to play again. PCL sprain, maybe grade 2, maybe grade 3. Differs with everybody. Obviously, we always say you can't look at the film of the injury. Does it surprise you that Lamar has been out as long as he's been out?
I did not think this was a 3-week injury. That's for sure. When I saw those numbers come out, I said, I don't know, in a mobile quarterback, the PCL really, if you tear it significantly, can lead to instability, where a quick guy who's cutting, trying to change direction at speed, the knee's not going to feel right. And so that's something you have to feel comfortable getting used to. But I do think this is an outlier that he's not, especially given the time of the season, that we're in the postseason. It's unusual that he wouldn't be able to be back. Do I doubt that he has significant swelling, pain, and feeling of instability? No, I really do think he has all of those things. But I would say this is something that some players in this position would choose to play through. I don't know if it was my kid, if I would want him to play through it. So, you can take that. I can really only comment on the medical part in that it's not healed yet.
Yeah.
And ideally, if it was a college athlete in the off season, you wouldn't have him training through an injury like this.
Doc, last one from me, and we'll circle back to the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. Yesterday, he did not throw the ball in practice with any of the snaps that they ran. He threw just light tossed on the side. But in any of the practice plays they ran, he didn't throw the football. Mm-hmm. He threw it in Chicago the day he got hurt. After he got hurt, played well in the fourth quarter. They took 2 weeks off. He threw it last week and seemed to me to throw it okay. They specifically had a game plan to not put him at risk with running plays, but his throwing looked okay to me. And yesterday they went super protective and didn't have him throw the ball at all. Where's Jalen Hurts at? We're asking you to do this from 1,000 miles away and give us your best analysis. But why do you think the Eagles are handling him the way they're handling him this week?
I mean, oh my gosh, shut the guy down. Just let him rest. This tissue has to recover. It just got traumatized for 4 quarters of football. Let him rest. Let everything heal up. You have 2 weeks. It's not like he doesn't know how to throw a football. It's not like he doesn't know the playbook. Like, there is no benefit to this guy throwing a ball this week. So I would just say, Eagles fans, take a deep breath. You know, I'm not worried. I actually have a good friend from high school who texted me from Vegas last night. Jess, I'm really worried. Why isn't he throwing a football? And I was like, dude, chill. Take a breath. So shout out to Bobby.
All right. You just calmed a lot of people, Jess. Doc, at Doc Flynn NFL. You can follow Jessica Flynn there. 33rd football team. Our friend Paul Domowitch, also a contributor there. Boston Sports Journal. Don't hold that against her. She does a tremendous thing here in Philadelphia. And DocFlynn.com. You can see her there as well. And you just made everybody really happy. Say, chill out, Philadelphia, chill out. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much for coming on with us. We appreciate it greatly. Enjoy the weekend's football.
Thanks. Enjoy the bye week, guys.
That is Dr. Jessica Flynn here with us on Birds 365. All right, Jody Mac. And she's being optimistic from afar, which is good.
Chill out. She's right as far as, and I go back to the start of the show, Jody. It was a PR thing to have him out there. They don't want to they don't want people in Philadelphia panicking. They're well aware of the eyeballs on this. They don't want, so they threw him out there.
But here, John, here's where I don't know that I can agree with you. When do the Eagles ever care about the PR thing?
They do. They care about
John, how many guys get listed as rest every single week during a practice, and you're an Eagle fan and go, wait a minute, how much do these guys make? And they're resting him in the middle of the season. They do what they have to do to keep their team in the best position to win. They don't worry about what McMullen or McDonald or Stu from North Philly says. They do what's best for their team every single week. They never bow to PR.
Well, I can definitively say that's not true, because when I write something they don't like, I hear about it inside of seconds. They care very much about what people think and about how things are framed. Now, there's certain things. Those are two completely different things. Yeah, they don't give a rat's ass about people who don't understand rest and maintenance in the modern NFL with guys who aren't hurt. Yeah, they don't give a rat's ass about that. But in this instance, when somebody really is hurt and somebody really is, early on in this process, I even got a text from somebody involved in the issue, and the words "calm down," people were used. They're very cognizant of PR and how things are framed, but there are certain issues; those are not comparable. Yes, when it comes to rest and maintenance and the 50 veteran players that they rest every week and they have all year, yes, they don't care. They don't care what people say. They don't care if people say, oh, they make a lot of money, they should practice. They don't care. When it comes to certain things, they care very, very much, Jody. Okay. Very much.
Can you guess or define the line where they don't give a you-know-what and they care greatly? Something's got to be there in the middle that this is one that we must care greatly about and handle one way.
Well,
this is one that we don't care what anybody says. If you got a best guess scenario for me, what divides
the starting
those
quarterback
two
of the
ways
Philadelphia Eagles? If you go back to Carson Wentz, remember when Joe Santoliquito had the big story that went. The Eagles immediately. I was at the Super Bowl at the time. The Eagles immediately called sort of a summit with about 5 or 6 reporters so Carson Wentz could decide. There are certain things, Jody, and the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, that has a lot to do with it. Now, this is injury related. That was sort of controversy related. But there are levels. Now, can I give you a clear what level reaches that level? Well, meaningless stuff, and they look at your example as meaningless stuff. Fletcher Cox getting a maintenance day, they don't care about. But stuff that they think is going to be misinformation, or people are going to get it wrong, or things like that, they care very much about, and they're very cognizant of, and they're very, I would argue, too cognizant of, to be honest.
Well, then I'm going to come down on the side of Dr. Jessica Flynn here, not on the Philadelphia Eagles. There was no reason he had to be out there for PR sake, for the right optics sake. If he wasn't going to throw and he wasn't going to do any major participating, just let him stay. AJ Brown had the day off yesterday, so I guess you're telling me it's a quarterback thing. That the quarterback they handle one way, and basically everybody else they handle another.
That's got a lot to do with it. I'm not saying that's the only thing. They want to stem the panic, I don't agree. I think they should have sat him as well. I agree with Dr. Flynn as well. I agree with you. I don't think he should have been out there. Rest him. But, then we're going to talk, and we're still going to talk about it. I've said from the start, people, and I should have asked Dr. Flynn this, people have been concerned about him throwing the football. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is the contact part of it. Now, there's some, as she mentioned, there could be some discomfort throwing the football, but I don't think that's the issue as far as, getting through this whole process. It's getting hit. It's the physicality, and that's why they took the zone read off the table against the Giants, and they were throwing it, 8 times or whatever it was to start the game. He's going to fight through that, but can he fight through a direct hit? I think that's the bigger issue. I think that's always been the bigger issue.
So if yesterday was to quell the tide of questions about the Jalen Hurts and what kind of, just your judgment, either your fellow Eagle Beat guys, guys chiming in with opinions here on the stream on Birds 365. I didn't get a chance to listen to much of WIP yesterday, so I don't have what I feel is my usual finger on the pulse of the Philadelphia. I listened to it a little bit coming back from Penn Medicine. Did it work? Did they actually get the desired results that they wanted from making this?
Well, and by the way, this is me speculating. This is not,
right. I get that. Yeah,
I'm just throwing out there because I don't know why he was out there, and I just thought of another potential reason, and that's Jalen himself. Maybe Jalen wanted to be out there and say, well, let me dress for his teammates and the leadership aspect of it that we always talk about that he's so good with. That might have been a part of it. It could be as simple as that. Did they stem it though? If that part of it is in the equation, you can't really tell because it happened, Jody. But I guarantee you this. If he wasn't out there, there'd be a lot more hand wringing. If he wasn't out there, people would be saying, what the hell is going on? So I can't prove it.
They couldn't just chalk it up to rest and just have him stand next to AJ Brown. If everybody else played and the only one who's not practicing is Jalen Hurts, then it sticks out like a sore thumb. But they had a bunch of veterans not participate yesterday, and it could have been Jalen Hurts just as easily as anyone else.
Well, the difference between AJ and Jalen is AJ is relatively healthy, and everyone knows that. And Jalen was very limited against the Giants, and everyone knows that. So nobody's talking about Lane Johnson. Lane was limited, but we all know Lane was limited. Why Lane was limited. In the case of AJ, nobody was saying, "Oh, AJ." I took a picture of AJ right away, not participating. Just to say, "Hey, AJ's not participating." There was never a thought in my mind that AJ was hurt. Because obviously they're giving him a maintenance day. They're resting him. There's a difference. Everybody knows, and everybody just saw Jalen Hurts be severely limited against a bad football team. And to be honest, he played his worst game of the season, understandably so. There's a difference there.
All right, let me play devil's coach advocate. If Jalen didn't practice yesterday, stood on the sideline near A.J. Brown, and after the practice, you got a chance to talk to Coach Sirianni, and he stood up and stared John McMullen and all the other beat writers in the place and said, if we were playing this week, Jalen would have practiced today. Fear not, that was the case. Because we're not playing for 9 or 10 days, yes, we erred on the side of caution. We gave Jalen a rest day. You think that Eagle Nation goes, bullshit, Sirianni, what the are you talking about? You can't trot that weak stuff out. We don't believe you for a millisecond. Or do they say, all right, Coach, if you say so, which do you think is more likely?
Well, if they've listened to Nick Sirianni about injuries all year, they wouldn't believe a word coming out of his mouth, number one. Number two, Nick Sirianni doesn't talk after practice, and he specifically talks before practice, so he doesn't have to talk to us about injuries, and he admits that because he doesn't want to give up information.
Yeah, but Jalen talked after practice. So if Jalen had given that speech, would they have believed Jalen?
Probably not, but he didn't give that speech. One of the concerns is the speech
couldn't give that speech because he practiced. I'm talking a hypothetical.
Well, no, but
if he hadn't practiced,
but he again reiterated how difficult what he's going through is. So I don't think it changes from the aspect of Jalen is telling the truth, and he's in a lot of pain. And he's fighting through something, as he said, in a very public fashion. So I don't think that changes. Jalen's actually been relatively honest. He doesn't like to talk about specifics for obvious reasons. And I get that part of it. And I'm trying to look for the quote while I'm saying this here. I think this has been a very public venture, but I've been able to navigate that. I have no problem with doing that. That's the thing I have to kind of get my mind right to do. It takes what it takes at the end of the day. If you want something done, sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And before he mentioned again that, he's hurt. So, I mean, he's been relatively honest about the fact that he's dealing with something.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I think had he sat and he came in and just listen, it's bothering me a little bit, but I don't need to practice today. I'll practice next when we actually have a game, when we're in game week. He said, good thing we had a bye week. Well, they half-hearted it yesterday.
Well, that's another, when players don't practice, they don't have to talk to the media. The NFL has rules that you have to talk to the media. If you're healthy, and if you're injured, you don't have to talk to the media. That probably would have created a larger firestorm because he wouldn't have talked to the media.
Now you're getting into a PR evaluation that I could actually wrap my head around. The Eagles said, "Yeah, we kind of we don't want to open that door of A, not practicing, and B, he's not available to the media."
Yeah, and that's the starting quarterback.
Then the speculation is going to start to run rampant.
Exactly. And they're very, very cognizant of these things.
Hey, John McMullen, giving you some good insight behind the Eagles and how potentially they handle some things. I'm Jody McDonald, the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Good spot coming up next hour, about 20 minutes from now. Bo Wulf for the Athletics. Been covering the Birds for years. Bo's going to hop on. We haven't had him on in months. Looking forward to talking to him about 20 minutes from now. Hour 2 of Birds 365 coming up next.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Got Johnny McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We were hoping this Friday, when you looked at it in the calendar, would be one for us where we'd be still talking Eagles football, that they had made it to the postseason, that we got another week of Eagles football to talk about. Well, it's better than that. We have 2 more weeks of Eagles football to talk about because they're not playing this week. They got to bye. They will host any playoff game they played this year in the NFC, right up until having to get on a big old jet plane and go to Arizona for the Super Bowl. If they can win 2 more games, it's worked out quite well for the Eagles. But they got to finish the deal now, Johnny Mac. Before the season started, the last week before the preseason ended, I jumped up to a 12-win season for the Eagles. You and I were both at 11. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go one better. I'm going to get to 12. They won 14 games. 14. Yeah. I did not see that.
And probably would have won more, let's be honest. Jalen Hurts didn't get hurt. Yeah, it's been quite the ride. That's why I tell people all the time, enjoy it because don't get used to it. Stuff like this doesn't happen every season in the NFL. And I think a lot of people haven't, for whatever reason, wrap their head around how good this team was during the regular season. Not just the quarterback, but, top 5 offense, top 5 defense, all the sacks, all the turnovers. It's been a really, really good football team. And and hopefully they get healthy enough to finish that job, because I think health is the biggest question mark moving forward. The Super Bowl, the potential Super Bowl, that's going to be a tough game against anybody who makes it through that gauntlet. The NFC, man, that's another part of this storybook season. You couldn't ask for anything easier on paper. Getting through the playoffs are always difficult, so you know that going in. It's the best teams, right? So you know you're going to be playing some good teams, but typically you have a lot bigger hurdles than what you see on paper right now in the NFC. That's why there's there's always a sense of urgency to take advantage of a season like this. But because of all these outlying factors, and then throw in the coaching staff as well, and the fact that Shane Steichen may or may not be here, Jonathan Gannon may or may not be here, Brian Johnson may or may not be here. This is Nick Sirianni talks about it all the time in average seasons. This is the only time this group will be together as a group, and they're good enough to win the whole thing, and they got to take advantage of it.
Right. We don't have to turn the clock back altogether too far to remember that the Eagles won the Super Bowl 5 years ago. How'd that next season go? Not all that well. They got a double doink win in Chicago, and then see you later. Bye. The season was over and done with. It doesn't guarantee you anything when you have a superior season, and it doesn't get any more superior than winning the Super Bowl, like the Eagles did in 2017. There are no guarantees for the year thereafter. And yes, estimations, your belief on what the Eagles were before the season started may have been one thing. And if that's the case, surely I know very few people who, other than those who wear eagle-colored glasses, predicted a 14-win regular season for the Eagles. But expectations have changed. As John says, this is not a minefield that they got to get through. They just have to take care of their business, and they should be playing in Arizona less than a month from now.
Yeah,
how much pressure is on them because of that, John? Because the expectation changed, because they are 14-3, because they are hosting whatever playoff game they're going to play in the NFC. How much has the pressure ratcheted up? And are they showing that when you're around these guys?
No, I don't. Nick's very good at that. And I trace back to what I said before earlier in the show. He constantly says there's always pressure in the NFL. And then there's always pressure in Philadelphia because of the passion of the market, whether you're 9-8 or 14-3 or 16-1. But they do a very good job of compartmentalizing. They have, we talked all year. Is this a trap game? Is this a trap game? For the most part, they didn't have many trap games. They had some, human nature lulls, I like to call them. They've done a very good job with it as a whole. But I mean, the pressure's always there. The pressure's always there. I mean, let's be honest, Jody, you've been doing this a long time. People lose their minds when you lose one football game in this town. I mean, the pressure's always there. Even with a team as good as this team, how do they, I had a guy that say, oh, with this talent, the constant Gannon criticism, with this talent, they should be number one across the board in every category. I mean, when you're that unrealistic, the pressure is always there with this football team. It is built in with this football team, and some people handle it better than others. But, you got a core group here of Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni that handle it very well. And then you have the veteran guys who've been through it all, Kelsey and Graham and Cox. They know. And Lane is in that category as well. I mean, they know, and they've been through it, and they understand it. So, some of the younger players may not understand it yet, but luckily you have those sort of pillars to make them aware of it. A.J. Brown's also, he went through it in Tennessee last year to a lesser extent as the number one seed and failing, we were talking to him about that yesterday. He realizes the sense of urgency. So I don't think it's going to be a problem.
All right, I'm going to ask you to look in your football crystal ball. And I know the number one focus should be Eagles win 2 more games, get to a Super Bowl, see who comes out of the AFC. But whether that does or doesn't happen, if they get to the Super Bowl, they win it, lose it, we're going to have football in 2023. Another season's going to come up. How much did the playoffs and the outcome of the games for 2 teams I'm referring to, the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles, going to affect the quarterback market during this offseason? The Eagles have the ability to do an extension with Jalen Hurts once the season ends. They can't do it before then because he's on his rookie deal. You can't negotiate an extension until you get to the final year of that rookie deal. That will be next year. And the Ravens are already facing that with Lamar Jackson. Jackson's missed a bunch of games. Jalen Hurts missed 2, and we're having this debate as to how they're handling him getting ready for the playoffs. Is he going to be able to play to that MVP level that he did during the regular season? Come the postseason here, you've got probably the 2 most prolific running quarterbacks in the NFL, and they're both playing playoff games or not playing playoff games in Lamar Jackson's case with injury question marks. How much is that going to be a topic? How much of it is it going to affect the negotiations that the Ravens have with Jackson and the Eagles have with Hurts?
I don't think that much for the reason, one other guy who would argue with your 2 most prolific would be Justin Fields. Now, just as a runner, obviously, but, I'll throw him in the category as well because he was injured as well. So there's no doubt that, if you play that style, you're more susceptible to injuries. So, there's no doubt about that. But as far as the thought process with you can't pay guys because of that, I think it's already been sort of self-corrected before this. And the fact that it's more the college product than the pro product driving this, and more younger coaches in that's the way they play in college. So that's what's coming. So you can pound the square peg in the round hole if you want to and try to. And by the way, I'll use Fields again. Chicago's doing a disservice to that kid, trying to make him Aaron Rodgers, at least early in the season. You can try to do that, or you can do what the Eagles did and the Ravens have done and build around the strengths of the quarterback you do have. Now, from the contract standpoint, what you're talking about, it's already done, Jody. And we saw it with Carson Wentz. And I fell into this trap as well. I'll raise my hand. Oh, how do you get out of that contract? Well, they got out of it because they structure it. Now you got to take your medicine for 1 year. But you can get out of anything. All these contracts are basically, you're going to hear the big numbers. You're going to hear the 5 to 6 years, the $240 million guaranteed, blah, blah, blah. But the way they structure them, and Howie's better at this than anybody. Normal players, it's 2 years and you're out. You can get out, and it's very easy to get out. Quarterbacks, it's a little bit more difficult, and it might take you to a 3rd year, but if you're the worst GM in the history of the planet, if you can't get out of a contract after 3 years. So if the catastrophe happens, you might have a season here or there where you're really up against it, but they've already figured that out. The Howie Rosemans, the Jake Rosenbergs of the world, they've already figured that out.
But here's the rub, John. And then there was Deshaun Watson. There is no getting out of that contract after a year or 2 years. Every penny guaranteed of $230 million. And without being an insider down in Baltimore and knowing what's going on, that's why the Ravens didn't get the contract done with Lamar Jackson. He wants to be paid like Deshaun Watson and feels he should be paid like Deshaun Watson because he's already won an MVP. Deshaun Watson hasn't. And, oh, by the way, he's got no cloud hanging over his head of 75 lawsuits for sexual misconduct, Why can't he ask for Deshaun Watson's
Well,
contract?
he can ask for it, but and people were angry about the Cleveland Browns around the league. They were very angry, and that was the assumption that, and typically, understandably so. Well, Deshaun got this, so the next guy. It hasn't worked out that way. Nobody's going down that path. So,
but nobody hasn't not gotten it either. There's been no big signing since.
But nobody is willing to say, I'm going to give you a complete fully. Now, Kirk Cousins was actually first before. People don't realize that. He got a fully guaranteed, I think it was 3-year deal. It might have been 2 years. They might go that route.
You can get out of that. That's not the same thing.
No,
the fully guaranteed
it
part
is,
but you can't compare a 2-year deal to a 5-year deal.
Well,
5-year deal just blows up your entire organization. If you a year into it, you go, "Oh shoot, we screwed up. We got to move on from this guy."
I think the assumption is that every team will kowtow to what the Browns do, and there's no evidence that that's happening or it's going to happen. And again, if it does happen, it would be more in the Cousins realm of all right, we'll give you fully guarantees, but it'll be 2 or 3 years. They'll lessen. And I've argued that for years when, one of the most disingenuous arguments you see all the time is NBA versus NFL. When NBA free agency comes and, you have these massive contracts and people say football's more popular. They should be paid more than basketball. Well, basketball teams they used to be 12. Now it's 15 or whatever. You got 53 players plus practice squad, gets you to 69 plus injured reserve, gets you into the 70s. The pie, it's got to be split up. It's just a math equation.
Right.
So it's one of the more disingenuous arguments, but just because Cleveland does it doesn't mean anybody else is doing it. And if they do it, it'll be more Cousins-like and the shorter term, which I've always argued to NFL players. You can get fully guaranteed money, but it's going to be, 1-2 year deals, increments, and then you're back on the free agent market. But because of the injury rate in this league, Cleveland made a dumb decision. And that not even bringing in the sexual assault allegations, not even bringing in the guy who hasn't played 2 years. And by the way, he's looked awful because he hasn't played for 2 years. I'm not even talking about the football part of it, just the finances part of it. But they felt like they weren't involved. If they weren't going to do it, he was going to Atlanta or Carolina. So they felt desperate and they went down a route that other teams, and Baltimore's a perfect example, they're not giving him a fully guaranteed deal. They'll give him a great deal, but they'll structure it like they have to structure it.
All right. Well, we'll see if they are willing to go down the route of going year to year. That's not an optimum way of doing it either. And if Lamar Jackson and, sorry to say this, Eagle fans, Jalen Hurts decide to go down that route, that if they don't get the contract they want, your only alternative is to slap a franchise tag on them.
And if you have to go,
please tell me the franchise that's won anything with a quarterback on a franchise tag. It's never happened, John. The NFL is 0 for that. There has never been a team that's won with a quarterback on a franchise tag.
It's never a good situation. You don't want to do that. But I will say that I do not think that anybody is following the path of the Cleveland Browns. I think now you never say never because there's some other dumb organizations, but especially those two organizations, Baltimore and Philadelphia, who have been, very strong at the GM position for years, especially financially. Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about it that much. I really don't.
We should stay on point and worry about the window that is open for a potential Super Bowl trip. But I do think that is an interesting topic that we're going to be talking about plenty here on Birds 365 in the upcoming months. Upcoming next there on Birds 365 is our buddy Bo Wulf from The Athletic. Been a minute since Bo's been good enough to jump on with us. Very much looking forward to talking to him about the Eagles and this postseason journey they're about to get on. Bo Wulf with us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Rams starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game Show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365 with McMullen, McDonald, and Bo Wulf from The Athletic. Haven't had him on in the dog's age. Mr. Wolf, how you been?
Doing all right. How are you guys?
Good. I see Bo all the time, but it's exciting to have him back on the program. And I guess we have to start with Jalen Hurts. We just had Dr. Jess Flynn on talking about the injury. Bo, you got us? I saw you mute. I saw you put your finger up. Oh, we lost Bo. All right. Hopefully he comes back. Wanted to ask Bo, where he was on the Jalen Hurts part of it. Do you just completely sit him down? Why is he out there if he's not going to do much? And here we go. We popped him back up. So talking about Jalen, Bo, he was out there, but he was doing very little on Thursday's practice. Why put him out there? Why not, as Dr. Jess Flynn just told us, just rest him, dude? Why is he even out there?
Well, I mean, what from what we know of Jalen Hurts, do you think he would have wanted to rest?
That's true. I mentioned, maybe it's a leadership thing. Here's
my question, John: Is Jalen Hurts the greatest healer there's ever been? This guy who can heal better than anybody else, or is he the toughest guy that Nick Sirianni has ever coached? It can't be both, right? If he is healing, then he's not playing through that much. But if he is so tough, then he hasn't healed yet.
I thought that, you bring that up. I thought Nick did a disservice to him with the healing nonsense. I really do, because then people expect something. I think he should have went the Lane Johnson route, which, as you mentioned, he has done. talked about how tough he is. If he went that route, I think it goes a little bit smoother. But yeah, well, Nick will go through. We lost Bo again. Hopefully, Nick will contradict himself, Jody. I don't know, 5 times in the same press conference, over under. So maybe that's the answer to that. But it is interesting, and Bo is correct in the fact that, which one is it? And I think he did a disservice with the healing part of it.
Sorry about the mic. Yeah, I think he did a little bit.
Yeah.
I just, this whole thing is so weird because it's so different than the way that they have handled any injury in the past. Like being so open about how difficult it is for him to play through. I'm struggling to fully make sense of it.
Yeah.
Bo, I need you to speculate a little bit here. Eagles are going to find out who they play on the weekend, and then they'll be hosting either the Giants or the Seahawks or whoever's coming to town the next week. If we can all agree that their play calling last week against the Giants was not prototypic of what we saw from the Eagles all year, and using Jalen Hurts the way they used him as successfully as they did to put him on an MVP type level, is it just automatically back to what we did all season long because it's the playoffs? Will they start a certain way and, depending on how the game's going, adjust to it? That those all important conversations had behind closed doors with Steichen and with Sirianni and Hurts in or out of that meeting. How is the game plan going to look like when it starts, whoever they face next week in the divisional round?
Well, that's the $1 million question. And that is, like, if you think about why they might be so open about this, if there's some kind of, gamesmanship reason to it, I think this might be it, to make opposing teams think that, we're going to be just as careful with Jalen as we were in week 18. He's not going to be as willing to take hits. He's going to have to be a drop back passer who gets rid of the ball quickly. I am operating under the presumption that come the playoffs, knowing how tough Jalen Hurts is, they're going to do exactly what they did in the regular season. And he is going to be willing to run the ball, and he is going to be willing to drop his shoulder and run into guys if he needs to. That is when this offense is its best. Obviously, they're not going to be reckless with it, but I would be surprised if, I'm expecting them to call a zone read on the second play of the game or something like that. Like, it'll be like, Jalen Hurts is here to play. This is the playoffs. Let's go.
Yeah. And I think, even if they, have a plan to somewhat limited, it is the playoffs, and you're going to see some of it. And I think doing it early in the game would indicate to the opposing defense, whatever, all right, we got to be concerned about him pulling the football. So I think you're right from that standpoint, Bo. But one of the other aspects to this is Lane Johnson. He's going to try to play through that torn adductor muscle, and he's an offensive lineman, and he needs his power. Does it surprise you that the Eagles haven't at least entertained seemingly the thought of, hey, maybe we got to get Andre Dillard ready? And it might be, everybody says, move Jordan to the right side, put Andre at left tackle. Andre's played left guard. Maybe he's more open to being a right tackle this time. Are you surprised it's not been broached, seemingly?
Well, here's my question. At what point have we ever seen Andre Dillard be a better player than Jack Driscoll?
Fair.
Right.
More talented player. Although I would argue when he played, what was it, that 3-game stretch?
He was fine. He was just as cromulent as Jack Driscoll has been at right tackle. So
I like it.
I don't understand why you would upset the apple cart, and Stoutland doesn't want to move.
Yeah, he doesn't like moving parts
to fix one, right? So why would you do that in service of a big question mark about whether that guy is even better than the guy who's been playing and has been doing okay?
Now, you mentioned earlier, Bo, that you think when that playoff game rolls around against whoever it's going to be, we'll know early on, oh, no, this is the Philadelphia Eagles that you saw a year. This is what's coming your way. We're going to be ready to rock and roll on offense with Jalen Hurts being Jalen Hurts MVP type level. will they be nervy enough to take the ball first? If the coin flip goes and the Eagles win, do they say, give us the football, we'll show you Jalen Hurts? Or do they just
to start the game?
Yeah, the analytics that
Jody wants that to happen so badly. It's not happening, Jody.
No, but you do have to. You remember that there are new playoff rules for overtime this year, and so there is an interesting decision if you get to overtime. Do you take the ball first or not? Because if you take the ball,
you better take the ball in overtime.
I don't know. I don't know. There's an argument to be made, because if you give up a touchdown on the opening drive, you get a response, and that means that you then get 4 downs instead of 3 downs to work your way down the field, and you can make a decision to go for 2 and try to win the game.
Yep.
Good point. And that was an overreaction to what happened last year. I hate when the NFL does that, but
I think I would go second.
Yeah, you can make the argument that you want to know what you have to do,
and especially with this defense, John. And that's not a knock against the defense, but the way that it is designed to force opposing teams to maintain drives. If the opposing offense has 4 downs instead of 3 downs against this version of the defense, I think that's a tinge of a concern.
Sort of like a college type atmosphere of knowing what you need to accomplish.
Right.
Yeah. It might be the way to go, but they are not. They are deferring if they win the coin toss at the start of the game, Chad.
Hey, John, what is? I know that you're a wrestling guy.
Yeah.
A great promo by Lane Johnson.
Tremendous promo.
Which we saw. What is this belt?
The gold belt. They just give it to celebrities. And people. And like WrestleMania is coming to Philadelphia next year at Lincoln Financial Field. So Lane's a big wrestling fan, and Lane's going to be a big part of that. So it was a good promo. It was a solid promo.
Very good promo. Yeah.
Solid promo. And people got excited because if Lane can do a promo like that, why can't he play, Bo?
Well, yeah, I mean, he looked good on the side field yesterday, I thought. But I mean, maybe, he's made a lot of money, but if you can get that Saudi money, then all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
We could go down a wrestling wormhole here. I don't think we want to do that.
Yeah, I could do 6 hours on this, Bo.
All right, Bo, we talked about Jalen Hurts and what they will do with him, how they're going to call plays and the like. I think we can also agree that last week in their victory, albeit not overly impressive, but victory over the Giants, they didn't run the ball very effectively. That would be Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders. And we know Miles wore a brace all week in practice. He took it off for the game, but he didn't seem to have his usual burst. Certainly with Lane Johnson out of the lineup, it's not the same 5 up front that are looking to open those holes. How much concern do you have going into the game that they're going to play next week without knowing who the opponent is, that Miles Sanders is not Miles Sanders right now?
I guess I'm not too concerned about Miles Sanders. I think that the level that Miles Sanders is playing is the 3rd most important part of the running game being successful, behind Jalen Hurts being Jalen Hurts and Lane Johnson being out there, right? If those guys, if Jalen Hurts is presenting the threat to the opposing defense and taking the attention away, and if Lane Johnson is out there, then Kenny Gainwell can have a fine game if Miles Sanders is not doing well. As long as he's protecting the ball, I think that's pretty much all they need. But it has been curious the way that they have consciously tried to not overwork Miles Sanders these past couple of weeks, these past couple of games. It's been noticeable.
Yeah. We have football this weekend, but the Eagles obviously can thankfully rest up. Not only Jalen Hurts, Lane Johnson, but everybody's banged up this time of year, Bo, and 12 other playoff teams have to fight for their lives. The Eagles potentially have 4 opponents. I want you to read them, rank them from easiest to toughest potential divisional round matchup.
Well, I think that the number one rooting interest is you want to play the Seahawks, because that would mean that they've eliminated the 49ers, right? So they've taken away the biggest threat.
That would be, yes.
In the NFC. So it's nice how it's set up for specifically for Eagles fans, where you've got the 7th seed on Saturday. All right, if they don't do it, we got the 6th seed on Sunday. All right, if they don't do it, all right, we're going to play the winner of this Monday night game. So the Seahawks, I think, would be your number one choice, because they would eliminate the Niners, and because they'd be flying across the country for their second straight road game. It's a defense that can be had. And the Eagles seem well suited with Darius Slay and James Bradbury to handle DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on the outside. I think I would probably say the Giants number 2, even though there is the finickiness of playing a team for a third time, playing a team that you just played 2 weeks ago. I just, if you can't beat Daniel Jones at home and a defense that's, very bad, even though it is interesting because it blitzes a lot, then what are we doing here anyway? And then between the Cowboys and Bucks, I think I would rather see the Bucks. I know it's Tom Brady. I know they've got a defense that could potentially turn things on, and Tom Brady is like specifically designed to like annoy this defense by just taking 4 yards at a time. But that Cowboys team just has such a higher upside. They're more explosive on offense. They're more dangerous on defense. I think they're liable to, lay an egg in Tampa and lose by 10 points. But I would be much more nervous about that game than I would be about the Bucs.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that one. I don't want any part of Tom Brady. But let me double down on the Seattle thing with you. I get it. If they pick off the 49ers for you, they did you solid, because most of us fear the 49ers more than anybody else as a potential hurdle for the Eagles to get over to get to the Super Bowl. But if they beat the 49ers, don't you have to give them their respect and their props and go, if they took care of the 49ers on the road, now they're coming in here going to try to take care of us in Lincoln Financial Field. Don't they merit more consideration if they actually pull this upset this week?
Well, sure, but then by that argument, then why wouldn't you be worried about the Cowboys if they beat Tom Brady?
No, Brady and that's before the game is played. I said I'd rather play Brady before the game. If the game is played, once the game is played, you get to reevaluate. You get to put them in a new order. But before the game, I would want to stay away from Brady.
Over the course of the season, the Seahawks have been a fine team. They get to play the Niners for a third time. Maybe Brock Purdy turns into a pumpkin in the playoffs. Maybe it's something like that. I just it would be hard for me to imagine them beating the Niners in a way that would really make me fear them in the divisional round.
Yeah, I'm surprised how much fear there is of the New York Giants. I don't know if you get it, Bo, but I get all this, 3 times it's hard to beat a team. Not if the team stinks and you're really good. It's pretty easy. I want the bad team.
I think that doesn't usually play out. Like if you look at the numbers, it's not that great. And also you have to think about it. If you're playing a team a third time, it means that team is a playoff team. And so they're good enough. And so, it's hard to beat a good team 3 times, right? But I don't think the Giants are a good team.
No, I don't think they're a good team. It's funny, though. Everybody's picking them to beat the Vikings, which I could see.
Mm-hmm.
But, that gives me pause, because if everyone is thinking alike, somebody's not thinking. I've always liked that little words of wisdom. And, boy, everybody's on this Giants
Sounds
bandwagon.
like a Zach Bermanism.
Yeah. Well, maybe I got it from Zach. I don't even know who I got it from, but everybody's on that bandwagon. And I think that's the least talented team in the playoffs. I think Seattle's more talented than the Giants.
Well, I mean, I guess if you take the Ravens or the Dolphins without a quarterback.
Well,
I'm with you.
I'm
with you. I am not scared of the Giants at all.
AFC versus NFC. I mean, you got it. Could you imagine if Lamar and Tua were playing that murderer's row of quarterbacks versus the NFC level, where it's Jalen, Tom, and then who are you going to pick, Dak or Kirk Cousins? I mean,
Dak.
The level of quarterback play between the conferences
and the ages of the quarterbacks.
Yeah,
they're all young.
So I want to talk about the sense of urgency, Bo. This team has set a franchise record for wins, so many franchise records. Top 5 offense, top 5 defense. We don't know if Shane Steichen's going to be here next year, Jonathan Gannon, even though a lot of fans would like the latter, even Brian Johnson. There's no guarantee this is going to happen again. With all the free agents, they got to take advantage of this window, don't they? I mean, they have a clear path to the Super Bowl.
I totally agree. I think it is really overstated to be like, this is the beginning of a window. Jalen Hurts is going to be a superstar quarterback. It seemed to have a good coach. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are going to be here for a long time. All of that is true, but we just lived through this in 2017, right? Like, things change. Remember in 2018, all we were talking about is how much better the roster was.
New normal, baby. New normal. Like, they were going to be the Patriots.
Yeah, there are just all these different dynamics. Even if they get everybody back, which they're not going to, it's like, well, you've won now. And so maybe not everybody is as willing to give of themselves and sacrifice their roles. And there's a little bit more complaining about things like that. There is absolutely no guarantee that they are going to be this good again. And as you say, they're never going to have a better chance than this one, given the easiness, the relative weakness of the conference, given that you've got the home field advantage. I think this is like such a golden opportunity. And I that's why I think, like, if they don't make the Super Bowl, I think it's a really big disappointment.
New normal, one of the least well-advised quotes from Doug Peterson ever. Let me ask you about a specific guy. I expect him to play well this week because he's had a phenomenal season, and we want that to be the case. And then we want him to be back with the Eagles again next year. Brandon Graham, where do you think he's at right now in his headspace?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I did a story on The Athletic, which you can read, where I spent game day of that Saints game, Week 17, with Brandon Graham's wife in Brandon Graham's box,
nice, with
his friends and family, and that was the game when he crossed the 10 sack threshold for the first time. So a big celebration in the box. He played more snaps than he has at any point this season because Josh Sweat got injured. He was like joking after the game about how tired he was. And it was interesting sort of reflecting on his career with his wife, Carlene, about, every time he's been a free agent, they thought that they were leaving Philadelphia. We remember in 2018, Brandon Graham shook hands with all of us.
Yeah, he gave us all hugs,
right?
Man.
Like, this is, I'll see you guys. Like, it's been a great ride. And now he's one season away from tying Chuck Bednarik for the most seasons with the Eagles in franchise history. And it would be his 14th season. And he's playing at a high level. I cannot imagine him playing for a different team at this point. And so I think if he returns, it will be with the Eagles. And I think and usually I am like anti-sentimentality for guys on the roster. And I think that has been an issue for the Eagles in the past. But Brandon Graham's not coming back to, demand playing time. He would be coming back to be, again, another third or fourth edge rusher, a rotational player. He is such a light and like energy lifter in the locker room. I think if he wants to play, they should welcome him back, and he will be back. I could see, they go and win the Super Bowl, or they make the Super Bowl. He decides to call it quits. He and his wife have talked very intentionally about like his transition to post-career life. Like he wants to be a very involved dad now because he knows that he wants to do that after he plays. And they're very conscious about that. But he also loves to play. He's playing at a high level. I think if I would guess he'll be back for another year, but I think it's very much up in the air.
Yeah. And that part he's played, I'm amazed at the level Brandon has played at. And I think the managing of the snap count really, really helps that part. But when he's on the field, he's been so effective. Great story. And by
he's
the way,
had games where he's dominated.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable. And, Chip Kelly wanted to cut him for Travis Long. So never forget that. It wasn't for for the ACL injury. But funny how things work out. This defense as a whole, Bo, boy, there's a lot of disconnect. I mean, it's, and number two, the old way of looking at defense, I agree. It's not necessarily the best way, but even in all the advanced numbers, this is a top 10 defense. They nearly set the sack record.
17 games.
17 games, but all right, 68 through 16 is pretty good. So we can hang our hat on that. Hassan Reddick, another feather in the cap of Howie Roseman. TJ Edwards is one of the best stories in the NFL. I mean, that guy is one of the best linebackers in the NFL. I think if there was a Pro Bowl snub, it was him. He was named All-Pro by Pro Football Focus. You mentioned the corners.
You think he was a bigger Pro Bowl snub than Javon Hargrave? Sorry.
I do. Because of the consistency. And plus, I think the down-to-down consistency. I think Javon's a great pass rusher. I don't think Javon's a great run support player. I think you kind of see that. That's why it was so important to draft Jordan Davis, get Linval Joseph in here. So I think he's a great pass rusher. But anyway, I'm in a wormhole. You mentioned the cornerbacks, defense as a whole. Why do you think there's this disconnect with some of the fan base not realizing in this modern era, Bo, this is a pretty good defense?
Because aesthetically, it's painful. And when it's bad, it's bad, right? Like when you're surrendering these 15 play drives, and it's just this like slow drip, and you're continuing to give up third down conversions. That's annoying. It's Philadelphia is all about aggression, and this is not an aggressive defense, which is a crazy thing to say about a defense that almost at the sack
68.
Record. Yeah. I just think. I think everything they do philosophically is sound. I agree with the general philosophies that Jonathan Gannon has, but I think that it's not like there are probably 2 or 3 really, really, really good defenses in the league that are good enough to affect good offenses. And I don't know that this defense is that good, but that's fine because if you're not that good, what can you do to change the game? Turn the ball over and get after the quarterback, affect the quarterback. And that's what they can do. I also think that there are some things that Jonathan Gannon does really well that we'll never see. Like if you just think about the guy, you just went through the lineup on defense. There's every single player on the defense has had a better year than we expected.
Career years all over the place. Yeah.
And there have been guys in terms of young player development or getting guys ready to be on the field when they're thrown into situations. Guys like Reed Blankenship, who has been really, really good. I think better than he gets credit for. Even Josiah Scott, who has made some high profile mistakes, has been better than you would have expected. Guys who get thrown into the mix have done well. The only player on the defense who has disappointed relative to expectations, I think, is probably Jordan Davis of the main players. And so I think Jonathan Gannon gets credit for that. And
don't say that too loud with John around here. He doesn't like when you point out that Jordan Davis is.
No, I
think it's great when your guy gets benched for a guy who's on the street in November.
I think let me defend myself. I think there's a difference between pre-injury Jordan Davis and post-injury. I don't think he's come back from the ankle that well. And they obviously got Linval, and Linval does it better than he does at this stage as a veteran player. But I told Jody will tell you, it back in the draft, and I predicted the Eagles to trade up to get Jordan Davis. I thought he was too esoteric a pick for Eagles fans. I really did, because he's the Vic Fangio nose tackle in the variable front, and he was there to win on first and second down, and then they were going to take him out, and he wasn't going to get sacks, and he wasn't going to get numbers, but he was going to have a big impact. Now, I'll say he hasn't had the impact I thought he was going to have, but he was starting to have it before he got hurt, and then the Eagles had to go in a different direction. Marvin Wilson couldn't handle it. Milton obviously can't handle it at his size. They had to bring in Linval, and Linval just understands how to play that role better than Jordan Davis right now. I freely admit that, but I think Jordan Davis is too esoteric for Philadelphia. I think they're never going to get why he's there. And maybe they change the defense when JG leaves and then it's all blown up. But for this defense, you need that player, Bo Wulf. You need that big nose tackle.
Then sign him in free agency. Don't trade up to the 13th overall pick to get a guy who you need just for the body type, not for the player.
Well, it's not the body type as
Joseph.
well. I mean, body type's part of it. I mean, that's part of it. You got to be a big, strong guy, but you got to be good at it. It's not like you can get any 350-pounder who can do it. Like Linval was a Pro Bowler in his earlier days. He's really good at it.
Yeah. And he was available. You could sign him for $3 million and use your pick on something else, or use your pick on something else and try to find a Travis Jones in the second round or somebody else who could potentially do that.
Well, that's a better.
We need to look no further than Brandon Graham to say that, we can't write a guy off after his rookie season. He's, there's a long way to go for Jordan Davis. And there are only so many people in the world who are his size and his athleticism. But from a resource allocation standpoint, you say esoteric. I say that's a premium pick to use on a guy who's only going to be on the field on first and second down. If that's the plan for
well, that's a better argument. I can hear the resource allocation. That's why I say, you see the mock drafts now, the Eagles taking a running back at number 10. I'm like, these people don't
first time.
They don't get it. They don't understand how the Eagles do business. So the resource allocation argument, I think, is a good one, but I still don't think that changes the fact that Eagles fans are never going to get the value of a player like that. They're just not. I argued that from day one. So that part I agree with you.
Okay.
And I'll just argue his production, and we'll see if his production.
And there we go.
And I know the numbers are never going to match up, but
I mean, the thing is that when you use that premium of a pick, if he doesn't turn into an effective pass rusher, it's not a good pick.
He's a failure.
That's just the case.
We can define it right now. I'm calling him a failure. That's the standard. He's a failure because he's never going to be that player.
Yeah, he's not going to be Aaron Donald. He shouldn't be asked to be Aaron Donald.
He doesn't have to be. Yeah, he doesn't have to be Aaron Donald. He's got. I think he has like 100-something pass rush snaps this year, and he hasn't hit the quarterback once. It's tough to rush from the nose, but
he's not even going to be Javon Hargrave as a pass rusher. I mean,
Jalen Hargrave is awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Wolf, Milton Williams.
Who will be the Jalen Hurts aside, and of course his shoulder is going to decide a lot of it. But offense or defense, any other player other than Jalen Hurts who will be the star of the Eagles' victory next weekend against, we don't know yet, but we're going to go ahead and pick the game anyway. Who is going to be the guy who steps up huge in addition to the quarterback to get the Eagles to the NFC Championship game?
I think Dallas Goedert has looked really good.
Yeah, you went to my man. All right. Bo and I are on the exact same page.
I think he's looked really good on low volume since returning. I thought in that Cowboys game, he only had 3 targets, right? But he looked awesome. And the Cowboys are one of the better teams in the league against tight ends. Their other matchups potentially in this next round are not. And I sort of think that, like, as good as A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith have been over the past month, we haven't had that breakout Dallas Goedert game of late. I could see that being part of the special game plan, with the extra week. You do some self-scouting, like, are we really taking as much advantage of this special player we have at tight end? I could see that happening.
And
at Bo_Wulf, read Bo at theathletic.com/Billy. Tremendous piece, as he mentioned, spending the day with Brandon Graham's wife while Brandon's playing on the field. Make sure you check that out. The most important question of all, I'm going to end it here, Bo. Is Aaron Cepas going to be the punter in the playoffs? He's ready to go, man.
He's ready to go. That was interesting, man. And he walked in to the locker room yesterday without the boot. And you would have thought from the way, like, all the reporters' heads turned that, like, the most beautiful woman in the world had just walked by. I was like, oh my God, did you see that? It's Aaron Cepas. He's not wearing a boot. It was unbelievable. And he was, like, willing to talk. He said he's hoping to be back next week. He thinks he can do it. And it was interesting. It was almost like publicly putting the pressure on that, like, I'm ready to go.
You got to make a decision. I'm better than Brett Kern. Come on.
Because Brett Kern, has not been very good.
He's been a hell of a holder, I'm told, though.
I think if I had to, water gun to my foot, what my guess is that he will not be ready for the divisional round, but he might be. He would be ready for the championship.
That's exactly what I said. I expect Aaron Cepas for the NFC Championship game. That's my prediction.
Water gun to my foot. That's what I'm going to have to use. And I'm going to have to look up cromulent. That one went right over my head. Bo, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board, buddy. We'd love to get you on, depending on how long.
I'm going to get you that golden title when WrestleMania comes to Philadelphia.
I'll take that.
He'll take a belt. Bo, thanks much. Appreciate it greatly.
Thanks,
From the Athletic, Bo Wulf here with us on Birds 365. All right, timeout's got to be quick because we got to come back. Put a bow on the show. Stay with us.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Number 1, Jeff D'Ambrosio. Destination Downingtown is rolling back prices for a December to remember. For a limited time, you can own, not lease, brand new 2023 Jeep Wranglers for only $30,995 or $339 per month. New Ram starting at only $30,995 or new Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cabs $189 per month. Zero down can deliver. Get the price you want, the selection you need, and the VIP treatment you deserve. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Big Finish Sales Event.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
All right, we are all but out of time here on Birds 365. We got just enough time left for Johnny Mac to give us 6 winners. We've got playoff action over the weekend, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, into Monday night. Eagles get to sit on the sidelines and watch, but I'm going to call you into action to tell me who's going to win this weekend. Who do you like in the 6 games?
Well, the NFC, I'll start. Obviously, I think San Francisco is going to beat Seattle pretty easily. I mentioned that quote. I was like everybody else. I thought, Minnesota's leaking oil. I think ultimately they're not that good, certainly defensively. They've kind of been doing it with smoke and mirrors. But the only buddy who's doing it with smoke and mirrors more than them is the New York Giants. And if everybody's thinking the same way and everybody's picking the Giants, nobody's thinking. That's a really difficult place to play. So I think Minnesota squeaks it out. And then I think Dallas is going to beat Tampa Bay, so you're not going to have to worry about the angst of Tom Brady. And ultimately, that would leave Dallas coming here, and that would be a great game, at least from an excitement standpoint. Chargers, Jaguars. I love Doug Peterson. I'm going upset there. I think Chargers. That's the Saturday game. The Sunday game, I think, is Ravens, Bengals, and Dolphins. Bills. Yeah, because Monday night is. So obviously Miami's, dead in the water. I mean, they're dead in the water. Buffalo's going to destroy them. And then the Ravens, Bengals. I think it's going to be closer than people think because the Ravens are always a tough team, but they're not going to have Lamar Jackson. You got to go Bengals.
Don't overthink it. Take all 6 home teams. Send it in. All 6 home teams, which includes.
That's not going to happen, though. That's
Jacksonville. All right. Well, you got your 6. I got my 6. We'll compare on Monday.
You're right.
How many out of 6 you get right, and we'll compare. We agree on 4. Yeah. I got Jacksonville over the Chargers, and I got the Bucs over the Cowboys. Other than that, we agree on the other 4 games. So those 2 games will be the ones to decide whether that's not going to happens.
Yeah, you can yell at me when I'm done. When you're done, you'll probably I can't imagine all home teams winning. There's always some upsets. And I expect we'll see some upsets, but yeah. There's certain games because of injuries to the quarterbacks to the AFC look pretty easy to pick.
Right. The Bills and the Bengals look pretty darn easy. All right, Punter, have a good weekend. We'll be back here on Monday and start to prep for an Eagle playoff appearance against, we'll know on Monday. So you need to be here.
Divisional round, yes.
Be back here on Monday. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy watching the football sans the Eagles. We know you'll still be tuned. I'll be back here on Monday in 2 and 2 to talk about it.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.